All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully, everybody had a great weekend. I'm just going to assume you all can hear me, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So, I just want to go over a few quick ground rules. So, first of all, I am coming at you live from my home. It is completely live. So, if somebody knocks on the door or something like that, my dog might bark, and I may have to go take care of that real quick. So bear with me if that happens. That hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will happen at some point. Also wanted to mention that I'm only going to be answering questions that are asked during the office hours. And the reason why I do that is I just want to make sure that I'm answering questions for people that are here watching it live. I understand that you can't sit here. A lot of people can't sit here for the whole hour and listen to me answer questions the whole time. So just show up in the very beginning of the office hours. If it's today, it's at 3 p.m. Eastern. Show up at 3 Eastern and put your question in. And then if you have to go, you can go watch the archived office hour later on. You can find the archived office hours by going to the office hours highlights page, and you can find that page just hovering your mouse over the office hours tab at the top of the home screen there, and then it'll expand a menu. Then you go to office hours highlights, and it'll be right there. I try to get the highlights, the archived ones on there as soon as I can right afterwards. Usually I get it on there within a half hour. So, and then basically the other ground rule is that if you ask a question that can be easily answered by a video or a course on the website, I'm just going to steer you in the direction of that. Basically what that means is that, for instance, an example of that would be, how do I fix my slice? Well, I'm going to send you to this, never slice again course to have you work through those drills and fix your slice. So, and that's just so I can answer as many questions as possible here. So I'll go ahead and let you know with who I'm going to start with here. I'm going to start with Gary M. and Bud N. If you are here, go ahead and, if you're on here, go ahead and copy and paste and put your question back in there. It's possible I may circle back to it, but most likely, it looks like there's quite a few questions to start here. So probably won't be able to get to yours unless you repost it in there. I just want to make sure I'm answering for questions for people that are here. So Gary M. says he overswings at the top. His 6-iron is 30 degrees past horizontal. Any drills to correct this? So first of all, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a bad thing. If you are going past parallel, saying that you can't go past parallel, I think that's what he means by going past horizontal. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, it could be a good thing because especially if you're struggling with distance, because it's helping you create more speed. If you shorten up your swing, you might be a little bit more accurate. That's debatable as well. In theory, you might be a little bit more accurate. But for the most part, you're definitely going to be hurting your distance usually. So I don't even know if that's something that you would want to even do because it may, it may hurt your distance. So this is a really, really important lesson. Everything that you do with your technique, the things that you're going to change in your swing, it has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So whenever you're thinking, I'm doing this, you have to think about, okay, how is that affecting my impact? So you say you're overswinging, you're bringing the club too far. So I think this is basically what he's saying here is that he's bringing the club back, and it's kind of like that essentially. And really, that's completely fine. You can be a little bit longer. You can be a little bit shorter. Typically, I just tell people, go as long as you can go while you still have a little bit, still able to control the club, because that's going to allow you to get the most distance possible. So you can work on maybe trying to swing the club, swinging the club a little bit shorter, but if that may hurt your distance, I don't know if that's something that you want to do. So that's why don't necessarily want to swing shorter, but if swinging shorter, you can still get a good amount of distance and you get more accuracy out of it, then that's completely fine as well. As far as drills to correct it, it would just be swinging shorter is all it would be. I'd just do some practice swings where instead of going way back here, you're feeling like you're just kind of getting a 90-degree shoulder turn and instead of the big shoulder turn. Or it could be, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, But if you're going past 30 degrees because you're really bending your arms, you can really focus on trying to keep the arms a little bit straighter. Like I said, having a little bit of bend in the arm is completely fine. And you look at guys like Brooks Koepka, Lee Westwood, Jordan Spieth. These guys all have bend in their arms, so don't feel like you have to keep that arm completely straight either. Like I said, there's a lot of theoretical stuff that you're looking at. But like I said, everything that you do, it has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So don't just look at your swing and think, oh, that doesn't look right, or this is going on. Look at what's going on at impact. What are you doing? What's happening with the golf ball when you hit it, when you don't hit your good shots? What's happening? What's the big miss? What's going on there? And work on the things that are going to help you with that. So, for instance, an example of that for me is I'm really kind of struggling with thin shots a little bit, and that's partially because I'm not getting as much forward shaft lean and coming into the ball the way that I want to right now. So I'm kind of working on that, getting some better forward shaft lean, because if you are coming into impact and the club's kind of level, your best shots are going to be thin shots, especially if you're hitting off of turf that is fairly tightly mown. That's basically what a lot of it is here in Florida. Now, if you're in a place with very plush grass and the ball is just kind of always sitting up like it's on a tee, then you don't really need to get a ton of forward shaft lean, because you're going to be able to get that that ball first contact, and you're going to be able to get that strike up higher in the face. Now, the only reason why you maybe want to get forward shaft lean is so you can get more compression on the ball, be able to transfer more energy to the golf ball, which is that's also a very good thing. But when you're playing in places that have very tightly mown fairways where the ball is just not always sitting up, it's almost like it's sitting on a plane of glass, you got to be able to get forward shaft lean so you can get that strike higher on the face. So, and that's really what you see with most of the best ball strikers in the world. So that's what I'm working on. Everything I'm doing in my technique to try to improve that is basically to try and get rid of those thin shots a little bit. And I'm also, just trying to improve my awareness of the face to be able to get it higher on the face as well. So that it always boils down to that. So it's really, I wouldn't make it any more complicated than that, because that's just going to make things way more difficult. All right. So Matthew B says, I use the putting techniques with variable training and get very good results on the practice green. The problem is I 3-putt 3 to 5 times on the golf course. What advice would you give me? So you really just probably need to work on your lag putting a little bit and your speed control. Most of the time, 3 putts are because the first putt had very poor speed control. Usually, we can get the direction pretty good, but it's just speed control. We really don't get, very, very good speed control. So you want to be, hit some putts where you're hitting it, some longer putts, because usually it's the long range putts that you're 3-putting from, right? The 30, 40-foot putts that you're 3-putting from. So you need to work on your lag putting a little bit, because pretty much if you can get inside 3 feet, get inside a 3-foot circle, you're not going to 3-putt very much. You're going to be, typically you make 90-some% of a 3-footer. So if you can get it inside that 3-foot circle, you're not going to 3-putt very often. Now, everyone 3-putts every now and then, but I gotta put my phone on silent here. Everybody 3-putts every now and then, but you gotta, to get those to a minimum, you want to be getting your lag putts within, 3 to 4 feet, because you're going to make most of those. So that's just going to be working mostly, pretty much all on your distance control. In general, you're going to get the putt to be going in the right direction, but it's mainly distance control. Now, maybe for you, it's not very common, but maybe for you, it's just very poor at reading putts or getting an idea of the direction that it's going to go. And maybe you want to work on that. But I would imagine with you, as it is with most people, it's just that speed control. You're either leaving it way too far short or way too far long in combination. Because if you're okay, so imagine that you're 3 foot off on a putt, to the left or the right. I would consider that, fairly, on a really long putt, that might be a misread a little bit. But to go 3 foot long or 3 foot short, that's very, very easy to do. It's much more easy to leave it short or way too long than it is to be offline that much. So working on that distance control is what you're going to want to do the most. Now we do the variability training with longer putts, focusing on the distance control aspect of it. So what that would mean is maybe you stand in one place and you have a 30-foot putt, and you try to hit the first one, 4 feet by the hole, and then the second one you try to leave 4 feet short of the hole, and then the third one you try to leave pin high, and you keep on hitting until you get a successful rep in all of those. And you don't focus not really on direction at all. It's just all about getting that speed, really, really focusing on that speed. And if you keep doing that, that's going to help you improve your awareness of your speed control. It's going to help you to be able to get rid of those 3 putts. All right. So Keith B says, in the Stable Fluid Spine series, Clay talks about a consistent 5 to 7 degree spine tilt at setup, although he doesn't say that this applies to every club. I've seen him refer to that with both irons and driver in hand. Please confirm that the setup applies to all clubs. I recognize that with driver, ball position at address is obviously further forward, but it seems that spine it would be, and that it looks like you got cut off there. So basically you want to be in that range with all clubs, that 5 to 6 to 8 or 5 to 7 degree range. Just basically, you just want to be in that slightly tilted away position, and that's with all clubs. So you can be a little bit more angled away for a driver because usually you're a little bit wider. You're getting a more upward angle of attack on the golf ball. You can be a little bit wider, or you can be a little bit more angled away. That's fine. And with a wedge, you're hitting down on the ball a little bit more. You're trying to get that ball first contact. It's a little bit more important. So you can be a little bit more vertical, maybe more toward that 5-6 degree range. And then with the driver, you're more in that 8 degree range. So that's completely fine. The key here is just to get into a slightly angled away position. As long as you're in that position, even if you're vertical, it's fine too. It's just the most important angle is this angle at impact, getting more angled away at impact, getting in that 18-25 degree range. Because if you're getting into impact and you're vertical, you're just going to chop down into the ball, and you don't want to be doing that. And if you're too far angled away, you're typically going to swing too much into out. You're going to have your hip bumped out. You're going to chunk the ball a lot of times. You're just going to be hanging back too much. So being in that 18 to 25 degree range with your compression line slightly angled away, a couple of degrees from the target, that's completely fine. And like I said, with a driver, you can be a little bit more because you're trying to get that upward angle of attack. But getting in this position here, this allows you to be able to release that club out in front. So the main thing is getting in that position at impact. It's just at address, being a little bit more angled away, and then being stable to the top of the swing. It just makes it easier to get in this position. Because if you're in this vertical position here, at the top of the swing, you've got to get a little bit more angled away. You can even be vertical at the top of the swing, but into impact, you're just going to have to move a lot more to get into that position. So it's just easier to do it the way that we're talking about in general, is to get a little bit more angled away at from the target at address, then remain stable to the top, and then get a little bit more angled away as you're coming into impact. That's usually the easiest way. But if you find it easier to be more vertical and being more vertical, or being maybe even angled toward the target, if you find it easier and you hit the ball better doing that, then who are we to tell you that that's wrong? So you do what works best for you. But the main thing is at impact, that angle is by far the most important angle. Because if you're vertical, it's just going to be hard to get that club to be in the right position and be able to get a good impact, which is by far the most important thing. So don't get too caught up in the details of, I'm 10 degrees here, so I'm not going to be able to hit the ball good. That's not necessarily true. It's more about just getting in that great impact position that's going to help you hit the ball the best. All right, so Dave S. says, can you explain what exactly is a cut shot and when you should use it, when you would use it? So a cut shot is basically just a fade. It's just a ball that would start a little bit left of your target. For a right-handed golfer, would start a little bit left of your target and then fade back to the right. A cut, it's the same thing as a fade shot. So situations where you'd want to use it would be maybe if you had a hazard. If you're a right-handed golfer, you had a hazard on the right-hand side, and you would maybe hit a cut shot so that you could start the ball away from the hazard and work it back toward the right. So that way, if your miss is a big old slice, well, then it may not make it to the water. You may still have some misses that make it to the water, but if you hit it dead straight, it'll end up in the left side of the fairway. Or if you double cross it, hit maybe a little bit of a hook, and maybe just be in the trees, but it's away from the big part of the trouble. So basically, the times when you want to hit fades and draws out on the course are usually going to be times when, assuming there's no obstacles in your way that would make you want to do that. But when you have a hazard on one side or the other, and you're wanting to start the ball away from the hazard and have it curve back in there, because that just minimizes your mistakes. Now, there's going to be situations where maybe you're behind a tree and hit it, you want to fade it, or hit a cut that goes around the tree and toward the green or something like that. There's those kinds of situations as well. But for the most part, most of the time when you're intentionally hitting fades and draws, it's going to be because you're trying to start it out away from the trouble and to work it back to where you want it to go. That's basically what I use it for when I'm out on the course. I don't know if you've heard Clay talk about the wall. We do have some videos on the website. I think maybe it's just one video where Clay talks about the wall. You put the wall up and you eliminate one side of the golf course. So if you have, let's say you have a hole where it's out of bounds on the left, well, you would want to start the ball out away from the hazard. So you maybe want to, if you're a right-handed golfer, you'd want to hit a draw in that situation so that you could start it out away from the hazard and let it come back toward the fairway. Because if you hit, you wouldn't want to hit a fade in that situation, because basically you're hitting the ball at the hazard to start with, and you're hoping that it fades back. So that's basically what a long answer to what a cut shot is. It's the same thing as a fade, and you just usually want to use it in situations where so you can start the ball in the direction that's away from the trouble, and then work it back toward the fairway or wherever you're wanting it to go. All right, so let me get a drink here. Alan B says, what method would you suggest for controlling the interim distances with wedges, say from 30 to 100 yards? How would you control the distance, and what tempo of swing would you adopt? So I would just use the same tempo of swing for all of them. That's kind of the key, is to use the same tempo of the swing. You just change the length of your swing to control the distance. So there's something that's called the clock system, which I use. I think most people do use it. It's a great way to really dial in your wedges. So what that would mean is, what I mean by clock system, would be your left arm would act as a hand on the clock, your lead arm. So what that means is, if a 9 o'clock swing would be about right here, this would be a 7:30 swing, and this might be an 8 o'clock swing. This would be a 10:30 swing. So you think about your lead arm as the hands on the clock, and you hit shots based on where that lead arm is. So you can kind of control the distance incrementally by how much you choke up on the club that you're using. So maybe you have, maybe, because I carry a 50, a 54, and a 58 degree wedge. So I know for all of those wedges how far a 9 o'clock swing goes if I'm all the way down to the end of the grip. And I know how far a 9 o'clock swing goes if I'm choked up an inch. And I know how far a 9 o'clock swing goes for all those clubs if I'm choked up 2 inches. So you can incrementalize that and be able to figure out exactly what that is. So for example, for a 65-yard shot, I know that for me, that's a 54 degree where I'm choked up about an inch. And that's probably about a 9 o'clock swing for me from that distance. So for that shot, let's say I had a 60-yard shot, I know how far I hit at 60 yards. So what I would do is I would just either choke up on the club a little bit more to take a little off of it, or I would maybe just take a little bit off of that swing. So instead of a 9 o'clock swing, maybe I'd take an 8:30 swing that would be about right here, and I would use the same tempo. So what I'd recommend doing to really dial those in is I would go out. Hopefully you have a driving range that would have something every 10 yards that you can put something down, either put a range bucket down, or hopefully they have markers down. You can take towels and put them on the ground, and every 10 yards have them. And you can really figure out how far you hit all these shots. And you can actually take a Post-it note. For me, I just kind of remembered them. But I know some people, they'll tape like a Post-it note onto the shaft. So if I have a Post-it note right here, they would take that and they would put it on the shaft, and then they would just tape it on there, and they would write exactly what, they would say 9 o'clock swing goes this far, 7:30 swing goes this far, 10:30 swing goes this far, and that's for the full length of the club. If I choke up an inch, it goes this far. So it's all, you're finding all of those, dialed in numbers. So I would just go out and see how far you hit, that your 7:30, your 9 o'clock, and your 10:30 swings with all your clubs, and then find out how far it goes. If you choke up an inch, if you choke up 2 inches, and you use the same tempo on all of them, and that way when you go out there, you have it incremented out, and that way if you have a shot that's 67 yards, maybe you take a little bit off of it, or you add a little bit to a different one to get that specific distance. So that's how you dial those in. Go out there, see how far you hit all of them. Write it down on a piece of paper, write it down on a Post-it note, wrap around the club so that you remember. But really, if you do it enough, you know exactly how far a 9 o'clock, just like that you hit a 9 iron, 140 yards or something like that. You'll know that you hit this club this far with this swing, and use the same tempo for all of them. So you always try to finish kind of in the same place. If you like, there's a great video on the website it's in the Top Speed Golf wedge system, where Clay talks about the clock system. So if you want to check out that video, you can go to the course, the Top Speed Golf wedge system. To get to the courses, if you click on the house icon and scroll down, the house icon at the top of the page there, you scroll down, that'll take you to the home page. If you scroll down, you'll see all the courses there. So you can go to there, or you can search. If you search clock on the website, you'll probably find it. There's a great search engine on the website that I recommend you use. It's on the right-hand side of the page there, upper right-hand corner. It says search this website. If you search clock, you'll find that video as well to work through the clock systems. It's a great way to dial in your wedges for sure. Let's see here. So Raymond M says, I struggle with a short backswing. And then working on the power turn class in between the ball striking master class, I do well on video with the drills. But when I get to the course, I revert back to the shorter backswing. Any suggestions? I feel it's got to be mental. So it could be part of it. It's probably just when you go to the course, you're not comfortable with it yet. So you just got to get more reps in with it on the range and work through that. So what you can do is you can actually play the course on the range. So after you do some drills, working on the shoulder turn and getting a longer swing so you can have more distance, you can play the course on the range. And what that means is just think about the course in your head and visualize it in front of you on the range, and use that long swing to hit shots on there. So you can play, the first hole. Let's say the first hole's 150 yard, or it's a 400 yard par 4. Okay, so you're hitting driver, and maybe it's a hole where you hit a draw. Okay, so you want to hit a draw 150 yards, and you're looking at that course in front of you, and you hit your shot, and maybe you block it out to the right a little bit. Well, if that's the case, then you can either reload and try again, or you can go out and know that maybe you have to punch it out of the trees, and that's kind of the next shot that you hit. So make your driving range time much like it is on the course, and it'll be more easily transferable to the course. So that's one way you can do it. The other way is just getting more reps in with it. It takes time to get comfortable with something. So that's probably why you're having trouble with taking it out to the course. You're just not real comfortable with it yet. So get more reps in with it. The more reps you get in with it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, and the more easily you're going to be able to transfer it to the course. So that'd be my biggest suggestion, is just to get more comfortable with the movement, and it'll start showing dividends really soon. All right. So Jim H says, can I shallow the club on the backswing, then just swing from the start with a lower body? So yes, you can do that, but it's very, very hard to do. So when you're talking about bringing the club back shallow, you've already shallowed out. I shouldn't say it's hard to do. It's just you're not going to get a lot of speed from that. So if you're bringing it back really, really flat, kind of like a A Matt Kuchar, for example, he brings the club back very, very flat. The club's already pretty, in a shallow position right here. So from here, all he's got to do is kind of get that club face squaring up and turn through impact. The problem with that is it's hard to get speed from that. So you're not getting your hands really high enough to be able to create any speed. So what I'd recommend doing is getting your hands up higher and then shallow it out, because that way you can create, the more space and time you have to create speed, the more you're going to be able to accelerate the club and create club head speed. So that's definitely what you want to do. And that's going to allow you to get a lot more speed into, because that's a big part of this game, is getting club head speed and being able to, get a lot of distance out of your shots. Because, it's great to get the ball, to get the club to flatten out and everything, and it makes it maybe a little bit easier to be consistent. But if you don't have any speed behind that, then you're just not going to be able to hit the ball very far. So you want to have that good mix in there. So, Bubba Watson, he's way up here, super vertical. You look at Adam Scott, he's kind of in between. You look at Matt Kuchar, he's down here, and he's already got shot out. So, yes, you can do that. But if you're struggling with distance, then I really wouldn't recommend it, because it's just going to be harder to get distance from that very, very flat position there. All right, so Bud N says, do's and don'ts with the weighted club. I'm not a big fan of weighted clubs. The reason is because it kind of takes away your feel. So I don't know about you, but after I've swung with a weighted club, it's hard for me to really feel the club head, because now it just feels so light, and I can't feel the club head very well. So I don't really recommend weighted clubs. But hey, if they help you to swing the ball, swing the club better and hit the ball better, then, who am I to tell you it's wrong? But I just know, for me, I'm not a big fan of them for a couple of reasons. One is what I just said. It's hard, when I go back to the normal club, it's hard for me to really feel the club head. I need to be able to feel the club head to have control of it. And then two, it's kind of hard on your wrists when you're using a lot of weight and you're kind of flinging that around. You're kind of asking for an injury a little bit when you're doing that. So wouldn't really recommend it. But hey, if it works for you, then more power to you for sure. I know a lot of people use like the donuts and weighted clubs and stuff like that, and they like them. But for me, it's just not for me. So Keith asked his question again regarding the spine tilt and stuff. So I had answered that in the beginning of the office hours. So be sure to watch the archived office hours after. I'll post it on here after we get done, and you'll be able to watch that and see your question get answered. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next one here, since I've already answered that one. Dennis Y says, I've been working on the straight line release and stable fluid spine, just starting, and I find that I'm hitting a lot more heel and hosel shots. So Dennis, it's hard to say exactly what's going on in your swing without seeing it, but I can tell you what I usually see with heel and hosel shots. So number one, you may be bringing this club way too much to the inside. So if you look on video, see where this club is it working very much from the inside, because what happens is when you do that, the heel and the hosel of the club is working out toward the golf ball quite a bit. And a lot of times that happens when we get steep. So when you get steep, a lot of times it will cause shanks, because what happens is, one, you're going to kind of stand up to get this club to work down on plane. A lot of times we overdo it and we get the club working too much from the inside. Then the other thing is that when you stand up, you're moving your hips toward the golf ball, and that takes away space for your hands to move through, and then your hands move closer to the ball, and it ends up with those shanks and things like that. So I'd recommend taking a look at our move section. Make sure that you're shallowing out the club and you're staying in your posture as you're coming through, and this club is working from the inside a little bit, but not a ton. You don't want it working from way out here, because then your hosel is just moving toward the golf ball. So those are the two big things I would look at to help you stay in your posture and get this club working more down on plane. Those are the two big things. But just as far as awareness is concerned, it could just be an awareness issue. And right now, because you're changing your technique a little bit, it's changing your awareness of the center of the face. So for you, you may want to feel like you're trying to strike the ball out on the toe instead of in the heel. That's probably the most immediate thing that's going to help you, is to keep doing what you're doing, but try to hit the ball out on the toe as much as you can. And that will likely move the strike closer to the center. And, if you actually strike it on the toe, then just ease off of the feeling a little bit. If you're still striking it on the heel, it could be those things that I was talking about, but I would also just exaggerate this even more. You may want to feel like you're coming in and you're missing the golf ball to the inside, like you're trying to hit it off the toe so much. You're almost like you're trying to hit a toe shank off the end of there, and that will likely move the strike closer to the center. So I would take a look at those things. And again, I know it's hard to tell. That's really hard for me to know exactly what could be going on. I can only really tell you the things that I see the most often. But we do offer an unlimited swing review program where, if I saw your swing, saw what was going on, I could tell you exactly why you're hitting it off the heel or, off the hosel sometimes, if I saw your swing. But I'm just out here just kind of guessing based on the information that you've given me. But my guess is that you're just swinging a lot from the inside, and you're probably coming out of your posture and getting that hosel moving toward the golf ball. So I'd be working on those sections, like I mentioned. But like I said, if you're interested in my unlimited swing review program, you can go to the Get a Review at the top of the page there. You can click the link, and you can see what the unlimited swing reviews are all about. If you have any questions about unlimited swing reviews, feel free to ask them on here. I'll be happy to ask any questions. But basically, we just take a look at your swing and tell you exactly what you want to work on. So if you're really serious about improving and you want to kind of accelerate the process and have an expert take a look at your swing, I highly recommend the Unlimited Swing Review program, because we're going to get you working on the right things right now instead of kind of guessing what it is based on videos on the website or things like that. Because I understand it's hard to know all these things for sure. All right, so let me get a drink real quick. All right, so Malik K says, hello, I played golf this weekend and shot my highest score of 105. I realize I may be a golf moron, but it's very discouraging to practice countless drills in the ball striking masterclass, the TSG course, and now the distance course, to find myself only getting worse. I may be able to understand my swing better, but at this point, who cares? I love the game, but at this point, I just quit the game. So basically, sounds like you're kind of jumping around from thing to thing to thing, and things are getting too confusing. You just got too many things. It sounds like you kind of have the analysis by paralysis, essentially, is what's going on. So what I would recommend doing is actually going back to our ball striking masterclass and really just focus on that and that only. Really focus, because that's what's going on in the ball striking masterclass is you're only focusing on your impact. There's no internal thoughts of, I got to keep my elbow, do this, I got to do this with my spine, or I got to get lag or anything like that. It doesn't do anything with your technique. It's only focused on what's going on in impact. So what exactly does that mean? That means that we're working on your face awareness. So there's basically 4 things that allow you to hit a golf ball well. 4 big things. There's more than that, but these are the big 4. If you're doing these well, you're going to hit good golf shots. So number 1 is strike location. That's where you're striking the ball on the club face. Obviously, you want that to be pretty much dead center, right? And then you have face angle. So that's the direction the club face is pointing at impact. And then you have your club path, which is like an in to out swing or an out to in swing. That's the direction the club is moving as it comes in. And then you have, lastly, your ground contact. So that's in relationship to the golf ball. Where is your club striking the ground? Is it striking the ground? Are you just picking it off the turf and things like that? So if all of those 4 things, no matter if you're casting or if you're flipping the club, if you're coming over the top or whatever it might be, maybe your spine angle is too far or this way. If all of those 4 things are good, then you're going to hit a good golf shot despite whatever technique is going on. I'm sure you see lots of players out there that don't really have great golf swings, but man, they can put the club on the golf ball and they play good golf. Well, the reason is because they have a great awareness of those 4 things. technique. All technique does is it puts you in a better position to achieve those four things. It allows you to be more consistent with it. But if you just go out there and improve your awareness of it and how to control the golf ball and how to control the club, then you're going to be able to hit better golf shots. So Malik, I would recommend you go to the ball striking masterclass and work through the course again. And one thing to understand as well is that some days we just suck. We're just not very good. That's just the way that it works. I actually had one of those days the other day. I've been improving quite a bit lately, working on hitting different shot shapes and things like that, and really been working on my forward shaft lean and seeing some really good results. And I was kind of on a high. I was feeling really, really good. And then I went out and I just absolutely sucked. I felt like I'd never played golf before in my life. And there's just some days that are like that where you just kind of suck. So you just got to kind of keep at it. And that's just kind of what goes on in this game. Malik kind of he's been through the ball striking masterclass. So, or at least I think he's been through it. He talked about doing it or whatever. But in that ball striking masterclass, we have what's called our ball strikers mindset. And it's basically just a little podcast where Clay talks about, all kinds of things, as far as ball striking and the right mindset to be in to be a good ball striker. But one thing he talks about in there is what's called the 20-stroke rule. And what that means is that on any, pretty much anyone who's an avid golfer, who, plays, probably, 30 to 50 rounds a year, if you're at least in that range, you're probably going to have 20 strokes between your best score and your worst score. It's called the 20-stroke rule. And if you look at any tour player, so if you look at Dustin Johnson, for example, I looked at him for last year. He had shot, I believe he shot in 81 at some course during the season. And he shot his best score. That was his worst round of the year. And his best round was a 63. So that's about 18 strokes. So tour players have such a huge difference between their best score and their worst score. Some days they just suck, and some days they have everything going, and everything's going really good. And you're making all the putts, you're hitting all the shots. And then some days you go out and you're hitting it all over the place, and you're chunking your chips, and you can't putt worth a darn either. And you just suck that day, and you shoot your worst score for the season. But usually there's about 20 strokes between them. So understand you're going to have some good days, you're going to have some bad days. If tour players can't go out there and shoot 66 every single day, then we can't really go out and expect to shoot, whatever our handicap might be every single day. We're going to have good days, we're going to have bad days. But if you practice and work hard, you're going to have more good days than you are going to have bad days. That 20-stroke rule is going to go down. So let's say you're a 14 handicap and, you're usually shooting, mid to low 80s. Well, your best score of the year is probably going to be, like a 77 or a 76 or something like that. And your worst score might be, like a 98 or something like that. So, but if we improve, then maybe your best score is a 72 and your worst score is like a 90. So if you keep improving, it's just going to move that down. So that's why we practice and try to get better. And hopefully, Malik, you don't actually quit. But I completely understand this game can be really, really frustrating at times. And I completely understand, if you want to do that, obviously. So Stephen N says, Q, my short iron, sand wedge through 8-iron are pretty good and consistent, but my 7, 6, and 5 are inconsistent and often have a feel that seems like the club is slapping at the ball at contact. Is this something you have seen before? Well, just in general, the longer the club is, usually the more difficult it is to hit it. So it's not uncommon to be able to hit your shorter clubs better than your longer clubs. That's very, very common to me. So I would say that that's definitely a normal thing. I will say that not sure what your club head speed is or what exactly the issues are with your 5, 6, and 7 irons, but a lot of people are going toward the hybrids and those higher irons, and mainly just because they're easier to hit than those high to mid irons. So I actually used to have a 3-iron in my bag, and I replaced it with a hybrid, and I hit that hybrid a whole lot better than I hit my 3-iron. So highly recommend it. Especially if you're someone with a lower club head speed, because the hybrids, they have a lower center of gravity, so it helps you launch the ball, get that ball up in the air a little bit better. Especially, I find a lot of people that they tell me, hey, I hit my 5-iron and my 4-iron and my 6-iron, I hit them all about the same distance. Well, the reason is just you probably don't have enough club head speed to really get those clubs in the air. They've been making these irons stronger and stronger and stronger lofts on them. And the reason is because the stronger loft you have, the more distance you can get. But if you don't have the club head speed to support that stronger loft, it's not really going to help you. It's just going to make you hit a low rocket that you're not going to be able to, hold a green ever with. So you may want to look at, maybe some hybrids in those areas. But like I said, without seeing your swing or, the differences between what's going on there, film your swing with a 9-iron versus your 5-iron and see if there's any difference there, or if it's just a matter of, it's a longer club and you're just having trouble hitting it. Choke up a bunch on your 5-iron to make it the same length as a 9-iron. Choke up down to there and see if you can hit the 5-iron better that way. And then okay, this is more about I'm just not real comfortable with this length of club, and this is what's causing me issues. So I'd be looking at that as well. But like I said, it's hard for me to know for sure exactly what's going on. But definitely longer clubs, just by nature, they're going to be longer to hit just because they're longer. All right. So Jason B says, "Hey Q, thanks for your help. Within 60 yards, do you suggest different clubs for different lengths, or one go-to club and vary swing to full, 3/4, half?" So for me, I actually prefer one club. The only time I would switch club, but I still know how far. So for me, in general, I like to use my 54 degree from basically 100 yards and in. I like that. I like the trajectory I get with it. It's kind of my go-to club. But if I have a shot that I know I have to get more spin on, that I know I've got to get a higher trajectory, bring it in higher and land it softly, I'm going to go to my 58. So I still know how far all those go. But the 54 degree is just a more higher percentage. It's kind of my bread and butter type of wedge that I use. So, but it's to each their own on that. If you find that you like to use different clubs for different length shots, and you're a little maybe 40 yards in, you like the 58 degree or 60 degree or whatever you use, and then beyond that you like to use the 54 degree. That's up to you. But I'm just telling you, for me, I like to use that 50-40. I just have more control with it. I like the trajectory, the way it comes in. I can raise and lower it if I want. It just works a little bit better for me. But you got to find what works best for you. I like the bread and butter, having that one wedge that I kind of use for all of them, and then using that higher lofted wedge, that 58 or the 60, when I really need to get some spin and bite on the ball and come in at a higher launch. Just a little bit easier to do that. Douglas A says, "Is Clay Ballard related to Jimmy Ballard?" No, Clay. That's really just a coincidence. The name there. We love Jimmy Ballard. We think he's a great instructor. Definitely, one of the best all time for sure. But yeah, it's just a coincidence. Dave S says, "Why do you not carry a 60-degree wedge?" I carry a 58-degree wedge. I used to carry a 60 degree wedge, but I find that I didn't really ever use it. And I really only used it out of the bunkers for the most part. But that's just for me. Why I have a 58 degree. I like the 58 degree. It gives me the loft and spin that I need. It's the 60 degree for me is just, it's a little bit harder to hit, and why use a club that's a little bit harder to hit when you have a club that you're confident in. So it's to each their own. Also gapping. So for me, I like the 50, the pitching wedge to 50 to 54 to 58 gapping, because it's 4-degree gapping. I used to carry a 50, 56, and 60. And I didn't really like the big gapping that I had between my 50 and 56, my 50 and 56 degrees. So when I got new clubs, when we went over to Ping and I got new clubs, I went with the standard gapping all the way through, and I like it. I think I actually use that 58 degree a lot more than I did my 60. I have a lot more confidence in it, and I like it quite a bit. So that's why I do. But everybody's a little bit different. I mean, if you like to carry a 60 degree and use that, then that's definitely completely fine too. But that's just why I do it. So Alan B says, thanks for the great answers to the wedges. I have a top tracer on my range, so getting the measures is easy. Oh yeah, that's even better. Yeah, I've seen that they've got a lot of those at ranges now. So yeah, that makes it quite a bit easier, so you can see the distances. So yeah, I would just go out and hit your clock swings and see how far they're going, and just kind of write them down as you go along. I think those you can download an app and it kind of show you everything that's going on. So that'll make it really, really easy. So highly recommend that for sure. Alan B says, is there any sense or feel I can get with the positioning of my hands at impact that would assist in getting the club face square at impact? So what we talk about on the website as far as squaring the face up with forward shaft lean. So what most people do when they're coming into impact, if I angle this down a little bit. So what most people do when they're coming into impact, those who aren't getting forward shaft lean, is they're coming in and they square the face by this. You see this trail wrist is pretty much a dead flat there. So they're coming into impact. The club is kind of like this, not a lot of forward shaft lean. You're seeing basically the club's just straight in front of them. Hips are usually pretty square. Well, what we're trying to do here to get forward shaft lean is to get the shaft leaning forward. Well, if you do that and you don't change any of the wrist angles, let me angle this down a little bit more so you can see the club face. There we go. So if you're looking at the club face here, and this would be like a typical amateur impact position. So it's square club face, not a lot of forward shaft lean. If I lean this shaft forward and don't change my wrist angles, so I keep my lead wrist flat, I keep my wrist angles, I'm not changing them. Look what happens to the club face. It's wide open. So now I have forward shaft lean, but my face is wide open. Well, we're not going to do that. We're not, instinctually, we're not going to hit a shot that starts way to the right because we know we want it to go straight. So what do we have to do? We got to turn the handle down. See, watch what I just did. Watch my right wrist and watch my lead wrist. My lead wrist is going from cupped to bowed, and my trail wrist is going from flat to basically cupped position when I close the face. See what happened there? So the lead wrist went from like that. My trail wrist went from that. So that squares the club face now when I have forward shaft lean. So that's going to be the move when you're coming into impact. That's what's squaring up the club face. You're getting this club to shallow out and then turning that handle down like I just did at impact. So that way, when you come into impact, you have a square club face and forward shaft lean, and you can release the club out in front. So that's what you want to work on, is the move. There's actually a great video from the move, the tennis racket drill. So in that drill, what you're doing is you're taking a tennis racket, and this is basically the face of the club right here. You're bringing this tennis racket up, and it's kind of pointing up to the sky. You shallow it out, point it up to the sky. This is an exaggeration. And then you square it earlier. So see what I'm doing with my wrists again? I'm squaring that club face earlier. So now when I come into impact, I'm in this shallowed out position. I can just come in just like that. Whereas if I'm kind of in the steep position like this, what do I have to do to get that club face straight? I've got to flip at it as you're coming into impact. And you don't want to be doing that. That's going to add loft. It's going to be hard to take a divot into things of that nature. So definitely the move is going to be what you want to work on. All right. Charles F. says, I start my swing with a forward press. I have been told this is a bad as it makes me take the club back with a closed club face. Forward press is completely fine. As I mentioned earlier, Charles, I don't know if you were here for the beginning, but basically everything you do in your swing has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So if it only matters what the face is at impact. So they're telling you, your friends or whoever it is telling you that it's closing the club face. Well, it doesn't really matter if the club face is closed when you bring it back. You can bring the club back where the face is closed all the way up. It doesn't matter. It only matters at impact the direction the club face is pointing. The ball doesn't care if the face is closed in your takeaway. Does not care whatsoever. So if a forward press helps you to hit the golf ball better, then that's what you should do. It doesn't mean that not doing it, you can hit the ball better if you don't do it. It just means that that's what allows you to hit the ball better. Then who is anybody to really tell you that it's wrong? If you are squaring up the club face at impact, you have great impact positions. I talked about those big four earlier. You're striking the ball in the center of the club face. Your face is square. Your club path is coming through on a pretty neutral path, and you're hitting that ball before the ground. If you're doing all four of those things, you're going to hit a great golf shot. And it does not matter in the backswing if you're bringing the club back like this or if you're bringing the club back like this. It just means however you get that club into impact, that's what matters the most. So you're probably just fine, Charles. But I would say, if you're having trouble, everything's going left on you, you're having trouble squaring up that face at impact, it might be something to look at. But if that's not the case, then I wouldn't worry about it at all. All right. So Lauren M says, "Hi Q, I've been working on my trail arm elbow. Give me your thoughts on it, especially pointing elbow straight down instead of flying out even a little." So at the top of the swing, I don't care about the elbow. It can fly. It can go everywhere. In fact, I would just, wherever your elbow needs to be in order for you to get that maximum range of motion, to get your hands as high and the club and everything as high as you can, that's where it should be. Not everyone is flexible enough to keep that elbow all the way into the top of the swing. I know I'm not. I got to let my elbow fly a little bit. So there's actually a test you can do. It's called the 90-90 test. And what that is if I go 90 degrees up like that, and then I create a 90-degree angle between my arm, so I have it just like that. And if I go like this and try to keep my arm in my elbow like it's almost in a pivot, I'm just going to try and bend all the way back as much as I can. So you can see that my arm pretty much matches my spine, maybe a little bit further. So what that means is I can probably keep my elbow in pretty good. Whereas if you go up and you can only go like that, you can't go all the way up to match your angle. You're probably going to need to let that elbow fly because you don't have the mobility in your shoulder to allow you to keep it in at the top of the swing. So allow that elbow to fly. That ball, like I was saying, Lauren, in the previous question, the ball does not care where your elbow is at the top of the swing. It only cares about what's happening at impact. So letting that elbow fly, if you try to keep that elbow in, so let's say you have a restriction and you're trying to keep that elbow in, and this is as far as you can go. Well, you're not going to be able to get much distance from there. But if you let that elbow fly and get out here, now look how much further I can get that club back, and that's going to allow me to be able to create more speed. The key is to allow that elbow to kind of come in as you're coming down. So it flies out, and then it comes back in. You just got to bring that back in because that's going to help you to shallow out the club and get this club working down on plane. If you have it flying and then you keep it out there, what's going to happen? You're going to come down steep and over the top. So just make sure that you're kind of bringing that in, bringing that back in on the downswing, but you can let it fly at the top. That's definitely going to help you to create more speed. All right. Let me answer a few more questions. We've got about 5 minutes left here. So Mauricio R says, "I followed your suggestions regarding accelerating the left arm in the downswing. I got a substantial increase in yardage, but at impact, it happens so fast that it is difficult to feel if I release correctly my wrist or not. What would be a good speed to practice, and how should the increase be for playing in the course?" So hold on a second. What would be a good speed to practice, and how would be increased for play? So it's a little hard to read your question there. It's a little bit jumbled up, but really you just, you use this, you want to speed things up when you're practicing. I mean, you don't want to go super slow. What I recommend is looking at what's going on in video to see. The video is not going to lie to you. So use your phone. Most phones have a great camera on them nowadays. A lot of them have slow motion, 240 frames per second. That's going to be plenty to be able to see everything that's happening in the swing. So I'd recommend filming your swing and seeing if you're getting that proper release or not, as opposed to doing it really, really slow. Because when you're doing things slow, that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen when you do it fast. So do it fast and check what's happening on camera, and then adjust your field based on that. And it may take you doing it slow with some, really, really exaggerating things for you to get there initially. But I would be looking at what's going on camera and trying to apply that to your normal speed swing. The camera is not going to lie. It's typically going to tell you exactly what's going on. All right. So John G says, Quentin, do you feel that your forearms rotate going to the top of the backswing and rotate through the downswing? Yeah, absolutely. So if you think, I know because it's a fairly natural movement, I think people don't feel like it does. But if I don't rotate my arms, look what happens to the club. It just kind of goes like that. So I've got to rotate my arms to get this club on plane, because otherwise it's just going to go like that. So you got to rotate the arms, and then you rotate the arms through to keep the club on plane. So absolutely, arms are rotating back and through for sure. Dan P says, what drills would you recommend for better ball striking and forward shaft lean on mid-range irons? So this is not just with mid-range iron. This is with any club, but essentially the move. That's the best drill on the website because the main reason why people don't have forward shaft lean is because of what you need to learn in the move. So one is shallowing out the club. Most amateurs do not have this club shallowed out. The club is steep. So when the club is steep, what do you got to do in the downswing to get this club to come back down on plane? You've got to stand up. When you stand up, you move further away from the golf ball. And what do? You got to flip at it. So that's number one. And then the second piece of the move, what I was talking about with the tennis racket drill, so it's shallowing it out, and then it's squaring the club face. So most people are used to squaring the club face by coming in and flipping the club, whereas tour players are squaring that club face earlier in the swing, and they're turning through, and then at impact, they have forward shaft lean because they've turned this handle down. They've got it squared up early. They have forward shaft lean and a square club face. So the move is what you're going to want to work on, and that's with all clubs. That's not just your mid irons. That's wedges. That's pitch shots. You want to be turning that handle down and getting forward shaft lean, and having more compression on the ball. With your driver, you want to be squaring that club face earlier so you can de-loft the face and hit up on it. If you de-loft the face and hit up on the ball, it really reduces the spin and it gives you a higher launch, so you can hit it further. So you can hit it longer. It's going to carry further. It's going to roll out further when you do that. So definitely the move. That's the biggest and best drills for forward shaft lean. Lag is another one. So if you're casting the club, that's going to be another piece that can cause you issues. So you want to make sure that you're generating lag in the downswing and not casting the club to start. So those are the main drills there. All right, so let's answer a couple more here real quick. So Gert Jandy says, when you have a relatively strong crosswind and you have to shoot a 50 to 90 yard shot, would you suggest just playing on the wind, use the wind as your friend, or rather use a draw or fade depending on the wind? And what wedge tech would you use, ball position, body tilt, etc., to lower the ball flight? So as far as lowering the ball flight, you just want to get more forward shaft lean. So leaning that shaft forward a little bit, that's going to help you get the ball to come down lower, and that's going to be working on the move, really playing that high-low game with the wedges, playing with that flight. As far as 59 yard shot, unless it's like a really heavy wind, it's just not going to do much to it unless you're just really skying the ball up there. You're hitting up with a lot of spin and a lot of height. So that comes from kind of flipping the club. So I imagine, you probably need to work on de-lofting those irons a little bit taking loft off the face so that the wind just doesn't take it as much. So that's one big piece of it. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily try to cut it into the wind or draw it into the wind. I think that's just overthinking it a little bit too much. You're not going to be able to curve wedges too much just because there's more loft on them. So you think about it, it's a lot easier to draw a driver or a wood or a hybrid or something like that than it is to wedge, because with a wedge there's more loft, which adds more backspin. The more backspin the ball has, the less the spin axis is going to want to tilt. So it's going to keep it more stable there. So I would recommend just playing the wind to push it a little bit, depending on how much wind there is. If it's a huge amount of wind, it's probably going to take it a lot more than just a little bit. If it's just a little bit of wind, it may not hardly do anything to it. It might just move it a yard or two. But if it's a lot of wind, it might be a lot more than that. So I wouldn't necessarily try to be hitting draws and fades with the wedges, because they're just not going to want to you're not going to be able to hit much more than a few yards of a fade or a draw with a wedge, just because there's not enough speed involved there, and two, there's so much backspin that it's just not going to it's not going to draw and fader much because of the spin, because of the amount of backspin on it. So I'd recommend just hitting your normal kind of straight shot, let the wind take it, help it wherever it needs to go, and just trying to play it a little bit lower shot so that it's a little bit more accurate as you're coming in there. So that's what I'd recommend. And the moving the ball back in your stance can help you drive it down a little bit lower. But I'd be working on getting more forward shaft lean, de-lofting the face with the move. And that's going to help you to drive that in as low as possible. So Jeremy C says, "Hey Q, what are your thoughts on doing the 20-minute distance course in parallel to the ball striking masterclass?" So yeah, that's completely fine. If you're in the ball striking masterclass, what I would recommend is that you really focus on the ball striking masterclass drills. If you're someone who has a ton of time to practice, so the ball striking masterclass, you're looking at 3 or 4 hours a week minimum working on that. If you have 8 hours a week to practice, then sure, work on a bunch of other things. But I would actually recommend that you really focus on the ball striking masterclass as much as possible while you're in there, because there are just so many kind of nuances to it, and you're going to have questions along the way. And you get basically 3 months of that, 90 days or so of that Facebook group. So if you don't take advantage of that, then you may go through and have several weeks of the ball striking masterclass left, but you're out of access to the Facebook group. And then where do you go to get your questions answered? I mean, you can come here for sure, but I know for most people it's a lot easier just to go on Facebook and ask your question, and then come back later whenever you want to see it. So that's completely up to you. But I would say if you're in the ball striking masterclass, really focus on that. If you have a ton of extra time to practice, sure, do the 20-minute distance fix. They're completely two different things. One's based on getting your big four in order, and the other one's just about getting more club head speed. So you can definitely do both of them. I wouldn't work on swinging as hard as you can and doing the ball striking masterclass at the same time. I would work on them separately. Maybe you go to the range and you spend 45 minutes on the ball striking masterclass, and you spend 20 minutes on the 20-minute distance fix, working on them separately like that. That's completely fine. So I'll answer one more question here. So Patrick C says, "Seems like the lag section uses float loading. Doesn't seem to come natural for me. Maybe I just can't let the tension out enough. Isn't float loading adding a lot more reliance on timing?" So I can see it's not necessarily float loading. You're definitely controlling the club. So you need float loading is like you're really just you're still going like that, and then you go like that. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I wouldn't call it float loading, because float loading is like you have zero control of the club. But basically, as you're coming down, you're generating lag. So I would just work through the section. Now, if you're used to cast, as long as you're not casting the club, you're going to be completely fine. Some people generate more lag than others. It's just as long as you're at least keeping this angle the same or sharpening it in the downswing. If you are releasing from the top, you're it's going to be hard to get forward shaftling. You're typically going to come over the top. You're going to release the club early. You're going to flip. So it may just be a little bit different feeling that you got to get used to get that working out. The other thing is that shallowing out the club is also what gives you lag. So if I hold the club like this, if it's straight up and down, I kind of angle it toward me. This is as much as I can do, right? So I have this straight up and down. That's as much lag as I can generate with my wrists. So that's part of what lag is. The other part is the shallowing of the club. So watch, now I'm keeping that wrist angle. Now I've shallowed out the club. Now look how much lag it looks like I have. So that's basically where the lag comes from. And then the other part is just a little bit of the momentum moving in this direction. And so the float loading part of it only accounts for a very, very small portion of what the lag is. Most of it is the wrist angle and then the shallowing of the club. That's what creates lag in the downswing. A little bit of it is just because if I go like that, you can see the shaft is straight up and down. I'm just kind of making momentum go this way. You can see that adds 5-10 degrees maybe. So as long as you're generating some lag in the downswing, you'll be in good shape, and that'll really help you to release the club out in front and be able to get forward shaftling. All right, so it's definitely past 4 now. So thanks everybody for joining me. I'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time, and I'll see you then.